Humanity's greatest tragedy is not that we fail to get whatever we want. It's that we often succeed and still feel empty. And the greatest manifestation is not making the world obey your desires. It is becoming the kind of person who sees, chooses, and lives differently within it. Manifestation was never meant to be a shortcut to luxury, instant riches, or effortless success. It was the art of bringing your highest nature into visible reality. It was about becoming before receiving, transforming before acquiring, awakening before achieving. A fearful mind can walk through paradise and still find reasons to suffer, while an awakened mind can stand in the middle of chaos and discover a peace no storm can steal. That is the greatest mystery of human existence. For thousands of years, humanity has searched everywhere for fulfillment. We chased wealth, believing it would end our anxiety. We chased power, hoping it would silence our insecurities. We chased admiration, pleasure, certainty, and endless achievements, only to awaken to a strange emptiness that no possession could satisfy. The more we grasp, the more life seems to slip through our fingers. Why? Because suffering was never born from having too little. It was born from believing we are incomplete. The ancient sages understood something modern civilization has almost forgotten. They taught that every desire carries a hidden question. Every fear conceals a forgotten truth. Every obstacle reflects an unfinished lesson waiting to transform the one who faces it. They did not seek merely to change the world. They sought to change the one who experiences it. And once that happened, the world itself appeared different, because life does not simply respond to what you ask for. It responds to what you become. Every civilization has asked the same haunting question. Why does desire multiply the moment it is satisfied? Why do people spend decades climbing mountains they never truly wanted to climb? And why do some individuals, owning almost nothing, radiate a peace that wealth alone cannot purchase? The ancient philosophers believed humanity's deepest prison was invisible, not chains or poverty, but a restless mind forever chasing the next destination while abandoning the present moment. They taught that a person who cannot master desire becomes a servant to it, endlessly searching outside for what has always existed within. Stay with me until the end, because the wisdom you're about to discover has endured for thousands of years. It reveals why some desires quietly disappear while others unfold with astonishing ease, why forcing life often delays the very things we seek, and why the greatest manifestation has never been about changing the world around you. It has always been about transforming the world within you. Chapter 1. The Divine Mind Behind All Creation. There is an ancient saying whispered among the earliest Hermetic teachers that says, "He who knows himself begins to know the mind through which all things live." The Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of philosophical writings attributed to the mysterious sage Hermes Trismegistus, begins with a remarkable invitation. Rather than teaching that human beings stand apart from creation, it presents the universe as permeated by divine mind, an intelligent order in which humanity participates rather than merely exists. According to these ancient writings, consciousness is not an accidental byproduct of life. It is one of life's deepest gifts, allowing human beings to perceive, reflect, choose, and continually reshape themselves. This idea has fascinated philosophers for centuries because it shifts the direction of every meaningful search. Most people spend years trying to rearrange external circumstances, believing peace lies somewhere beyond the next achievement, the next possession, or the next season of life. Yet, the Hermetic teachers gently reversed this pursuit. Before changing the world around you, they suggested, Become familiar with the world within you. Self-knowledge always precedes wise action. Imagine a traveler carrying a lantern through a dark forest. If the glass surrounding the flame becomes covered with dust, the path ahead appears dangerous and confusing. The traveler may blame the forest for its darkness when the true problem lies much closer. Clean the lantern, and the path becomes clearer without the forest changing at all. The ancient initiates believed the human mind functions much like that lantern. Fear clouds perception. Pride distorts judgment. Endless distraction weakens attention. But when awareness becomes clear through reflection and disciplined living, reality itself often appears differently. Problems that once seemed impossible reveal unexpected solutions. Relationships soften because reactions become wiser. Opportunities emerge where only obstacles were noticed before. The outer landscape often changes because the inner observer has changed first. Modern psychology echoes part of this ancient intuition. Our beliefs, expectations, and habitual patterns of attention profoundly influence what we notice, how we interpret events, and how we respond to them. Two people may enter the same conversation and leave with entirely different experiences, not because reality changed, but because each mind filtered it differently. The Hermetic teachers understood this long before the language of cognitive science existed. What you repeatedly notice quietly becomes the world you believe you inhabit. That is why the initiates were trained to observe themselves before attempting to influence anything else. They watched their thoughts without immediately believing them. They examined their fears without allowing fear to become identity. They questioned their assumptions instead of accepting every passing emotion as truth. Their first discipline was not acquiring secret knowledge. It was becoming conscious. Awareness creates freedom. This inward journey was never intended to produce isolation. Quite the opposite. The more clearly a person understood themselves, the more compassion naturally arose toward others. Every individual struggles with unseen fears. Every heart carries invisible burdens. Every life contains moments of uncertainty. Self-knowledge gradually dissolves harsh judgment because it reveals how deeply connected human experience truly is. The Corpus Hermeticum repeatedly points toward rebirth, not necessarily as a physical event, but as an awakening of consciousness. A person may remain in the same home, perform the same work, and greet the same neighbors, yet experience life through entirely different eyes. Old resentments lose their power. Endless comparison begins to fade. Gratitude quietly replaces scarcity. Nothing outside may appear different, yet everything feels transformed because perception itself has matured. This is one of the oldest forms of manifestation ever described, not forcing reality to obey your wishes, but becoming the kind of person who sees reality more clearly, and therefore acts more wisely within it. Outer achievement becomes a consequence of inner refinement. The Hermetic masters understood something that every generation must rediscover for itself. Success without self-knowledge often produces anxiety. Wealth without wisdom often produces fear of loss. Power without character often destroys the one who possesses it. Lasting fulfillment cannot be built upon an unfamiliar mind. Know yourself before seeking to reshape the world. There is an old account preserved through Hermetic tradition of a young initiate who traveled many weeks to study beneath an elderly temple master. Expecting to receive hidden formulas and sacred rituals, he arrived eager to unlock the mysteries of creation. Instead, the master handed him a polished bronze mirror. For 1 year, the elder said, carry this mirror each morning. Before asking how the universe works, first ask who is looking into it. The young man grew frustrated. He had crossed mountains expecting secret teachings. Yet each dawn he found only his own reflection. Slowly, however, he began to notice something extraordinary. On days ruled by anger, his face hardened before anyone spoke to him. On days filled with gratitude, strangers greeted him with unexpected warmth. The villages he visited had not changed. The man entering them had. When the year ended, the master smiled and said, "Now you are ready." The greatest mystery was never hidden inside this temple. It was hidden inside the one who entered it. Every true journey begins within. Chapter 2. The Alchemy of Becoming Before Receiving. Imagine a blacksmith placing raw iron into a blazing fire. The flames do not destroy the metal. They soften it, making it capable of becoming something stronger and more beautiful than before. Without heat, the iron remains rigid. Without challenge, its hidden potential never appears. The ancient alchemists believed the same principle applied to human life. Every disappointment invites patience. Every failure invites humility. Every loss invites gratitude for what remains. Every fear quietly asks whether courage will answer. Transformation rarely arrives through comfort alone. Modern psychology recognizes a similar pattern. People often develop their deepest resilience not during seasons of ease, but through adversity that demands adaptation, reflection, and growth. Difficulty itself is not desirable, yet it frequently becomes the environment in which wisdom matures. The alchemists would have nodded knowingly. They understood that abundance begins long before wealth appears. It begins in perception. Scarcity is not always the absence of possessions. Often it is the belief that nothing is ever enough. Two people may own identical homes, earn similar incomes, and enjoy equal opportunities. One constantly notices what is missing. The other quietly appreciates what has already been given. Their circumstances resemble one another, yet they inhabit entirely different emotional worlds. Gratitude transforms experience. This is why ancient philosophers repeatedly treated gratitude not merely as good manners, but as disciplined perception. A grateful mind notices possibilities that resentment overlooks. A hopeful heart recognizes opportunities that fear never sees. Attention quietly shapes action, and repeated action gradually shapes a life. This does not mean pretending hardship does not exist. The alchemists never denied suffering. They simply refused to believe suffering possessed the final word. Lead contains the possibility of gold. Fear contains the possibility of wisdom. Failure contains the possibility of maturity. Scarcity contains the possibility of appreciation. Every experience carries hidden material for transformation. The ancient masters also warned against confusing true alchemy with magical thinking. They did not believe repeating beautiful words while avoiding responsibility would transform life. Nor did they teach that wishing alone could replace discipline. Every meaningful change demanded participation. A fearful person becomes courageous by acting despite fear. An impatient person becomes peaceful through repeated practice. A bitter heart becomes lighter through forgiveness. One decision at a time. The inner world changes through daily refinement rather than dramatic moments. Each small choice becomes another quiet act of alchemy. There is an old story told among medieval alchemists of a respected master who spent decades searching for the legendary philosopher's stone. After many years, a young apprentice finally asked, "Master, have you discovered the secret that turns lead into gold?" The old man smiled and placed 2 pieces of metal upon the table. One was ordinary lead. The other was polished gold. "I never found the stone," he admitted. The apprentice looked disappointed. "But I discovered something greater." He handed the young man a weathered journal. Its pages contained decades of reflections, failures, acts of forgiveness, moments of gratitude, disciplined habits, and lessons learned through hardship. "The lead was never these metals," the master whispered. "The lead was the impatient man who first entered this workshop. The gold is the man leaving it today." The apprentice looked again at the journal and realized the laboratory had never been the room around them. It had always been the human heart. That is the sacred art of alchemy. Transformation begins within, and every life offers the fire needed to become gold. Chapter 3. The Ancient Architecture of Belief. There is an ancient proverb that says, "The tree grows toward the light it believes exists." Whether or not those exact words were ever carved into stone matters less than the wisdom they contain. Long before psychology became a science, philosophers, physicians, and spiritual teachers observed a remarkable pattern. Human beings rarely act according to what is objectively possible. More often, they act according to what they quietly believe is possible. Belief is not magic. It is direction. The ancient world understood this distinction well. Faith was never meant to be blind optimism that ignored hardship or denied reality. Rather, faith was the quiet confidence that meaningful action remained worthwhile even when outcomes were uncertain. Blind optimism says, "Everything will work out because I wish it to." Ancient wisdom says, "I will continue acting wisely regardless of uncertainty." The difference is profound. Imagine two farmers standing before identical fields after a long season of drought. The first throws down his tools and declares that nothing can be done. The second cannot command the rain either, but he repairs his fences, prepares the soil, clears the weeds, and gathers seed for the next season. Neither controls the weather, yet one prepares for possibility while the other surrenders to despair. Expectation quietly guides behavior. This truth appears throughout history. Ancient commanders often noticed that armies expecting defeat became hesitant long before battle began. Their movements slowed. Their decisions became uncertain. Small setbacks felt enormous because they confirmed what they already feared. Meanwhile, disciplined armies maintained confidence, not because victory was guaranteed, but because confidence itself encouraged clearer judgment and steadier action. The battlefield changed little. The minds entering it changed everything. Modern psychology continues to explore this phenomenon. Expectations influence attention, motivation, persistence, and resilience. People naturally notice evidence that confirms their existing beliefs while overlooking evidence that challenges them. This tendency does not create reality out of nothing, but it powerfully shapes how we experience it and how we respond within it. One fascinating illustration comes from medicine through what is commonly called the placebo effect. When some patients believe they are receiving helpful treatment, measurable improvements can sometimes occur even when the treatment itself contains no active medicine. This does not mean diseases can simply be wished away, nor does it replace genuine medical care. Rather, it reveals something remarkable about the relationship between expectation, hope, and the body's own responses. The mind and body speak more often than we realize. The ancients would not have found this surprising. They had long observed that fear weakens strength, hope restores courage, gratitude eases tension, and despair often drains vitality. Though they lacked modern scientific language, they recognized that inner states influence outward living. Belief becomes dangerous, however, when it quietly turns against its owner. Many people unknowingly carry invisible assumptions that sabotage their own efforts. I always fail. People never appreciate me. I'm too old to change. I've missed my chance. These thoughts rarely arrive as loud declarations. They settle gently into daily habits until they begin directing behavior from the shadows. Someone who expects rejection may avoid meaningful conversations. Someone convinced success belongs only to others may never fully commit to worthy opportunities. Their assumptions become invisible limits. The prison was built from within. Ancient philosophers constantly urged their students to examine these hidden beliefs. Socrates questioned assumptions through dialogue. Stoics challenged destructive judgments. Hermetic teachers encouraged self-observation before self-transformation. Though their methods differed, they shared one conviction: the unexamined mind quietly governs the unexamined life. One of the greatest burdens that distorts belief is unresolved resentment. A person who clings to anger often believes they are punishing someone else. Yet ancient teachers repeatedly warned that bitterness first imprisons the one carrying it. Resentment consumes attention. It revisits old injuries until yesterday begins controlling today. Forgiveness, therefore, was never presented as approving injustice or pretending pain never occurred. It was understood as an act of liberation. You release the chain, the one forgiven may never change, the past may never disappear, but the heart regains its freedom to move forward. Psychologically, forgiveness often reduces the exhausting cycle of rumination. Energy, once trapped inside old wounds, becomes available again for meaningful relationships, purposeful work, and quiet joy. The ancient masters recognized this long before neuroscience explored stress and emotional regulation. Faith grows where resentment ends. Belief becomes strongest when it is joined with disciplined living. A hopeful mind, unsupported by action, eventually becomes fantasy. But hope strengthened through patience, integrity, courage, and consistent effort gradually reshapes both character and circumstance. Believe wisely, then live accordingly. There is an old story told among early Hermetic circles of an aging physician who treated villagers for many decades. Whenever frightened patients entered his home, he first offered them water before examining their illness. One young apprentice eventually asked why. The physician smiled and replied, "Because fear closes the body before medicine can begin its work. Hope opens what terror has tightened." Years later, after the physician died, the apprentice discovered a sentence written inside his teacher's worn journal. "I never healed anyone through belief alone, but I never saw lasting healing where hope was entirely absent." From that day forward, the apprentice remembered that medicine treats the body, wisdom steadies the mind, and faith gives courage to continue walking toward health, even when the road remains uncertain. Belief does not replace action. It gives action its direction. Chapter 4. Manifestation Myths that Mislead Millions. Every generation inherits stories that promise shortcuts. Some promise wealth without labor. Others promise wisdom without discipline. Today, countless voices promise manifestation without transformation. They suggest that repeating beautiful words, imagining success vividly enough, or wishing intensely enough can reshape an entire life without demanding any corresponding change in character or conduct. Ancient philosophy never taught this. The oldest teachers were far more demanding. They believed that intention begins the journey, but disciplined action completes it. An arrow aimed perfectly but never released reaches no target. The Hermetic masters spoke of universal principles, yet they never encouraged passivity. Plato taught that ideals inspire action, not replace it. Aristotle insisted that excellence grows through repeated habit. The Stoics emphasized disciplined conduct over pleasant imagination. Even the Taoist sages often misunderstood as teaching effortless living, spoke of harmonious action arising from cultivated awareness rather than careless wishing. Ancient wisdom admired participation, not passivity. One of the greatest myths surrounding manifestation is the belief that thoughts alone determine reality. Thoughts matter deeply. They influence attention, motivation, choices, and perseverance. But a seed left in the hand never becomes a tree. It must be planted, watered, protected, and patiently tended. So it is with every worthy aspiration. Another misunderstanding claims that positive thinking requires denying pain. The ancients would have considered such advice dangerous. Marcus Aurelius faced war, plague, betrayal, and death without pretending these realities did not exist. The Buddha began his teachings by acknowledging suffering rather than avoiding it. Confucius accepted hardship as part of moral development. None encouraged escaping reality. Instead, they taught responding wisely to it. Truth comes before transformation. Some also imagine manifestation means controlling every event that unfolds. History repeatedly teaches otherwise. Storms still arrive, loved ones still grow old, unexpected losses still occur. No philosophy worthy of respect has ever promised complete control over external circumstances. The greatest freedom lies elsewhere. It lies in governing your response. This is where genuine manifestation begins, not in commanding life, but in becoming the kind of person capable of meeting life with clarity, courage, and integrity. Character becomes destiny. Virtue was therefore placed at the center of every enduring philosophical tradition. Without honesty, success becomes fragile. Without discipline, opportunity fades. Without patience, good beginnings collapse before maturity arrives. Without compassion, achievement feels strangely empty. Ancient teachers believed that inner refinement naturally influences outer life, because it transforms decisions repeated every single day. A generous person builds trust. A disciplined person develops skill. A patient person notices opportunities others abandon too quickly. The invisible slowly becomes visible. Another common misconception insists that manifestation is measured only through money or material success. Ancient wisdom offered a richer definition. Can wealth purchase peaceful sleep? Can fame guarantee loyal friendship? Can status remove fear? History answers these questions clearly. Many kings died restless. Many philosophers died content. The measure of a flourishing life has always extended beyond possessions. Perhaps the greatest manifestation is becoming difficult to corrupt. Ancient alchemists understood this beautifully. They did not celebrate turning lead into gold because gold was valuable. They celebrated it because it symbolized the refinement of the human spirit. The true miracle was never changing metal. It was changing oneself. Every courageous decision is alchemy. Every act of forgiveness is manifestation. Every disciplined habit reshapes tomorrow. Every honest conversation changes the future. The extraordinary grows quietly from the ordinary. Manifestation is less about attracting miracles than becoming prepared for meaningful opportunities when they arrive. The farmer who has tilled his field recognizes the first rain as a blessing. The farmer who never prepared watches the same rain become wasted possibility. Preparation welcomes abundance. There is an old account from the Academy of Plato concerning a gifted young student who constantly asked his teacher how to achieve greatness. Each day he sought another secret, another hidden technique, another mysterious shortcut. One morning Plato handed him a simple clay lamp and said, "Keep this burning every night for 1 year." The student obeyed, though he could not understand the purpose. Night after night he trimmed the wick, cleaned the soot, replaced the oil, and protected the small flame from the wind. When the year had passed, Plato asked, "What have you learned?" The young man replied, "At first I believed greatness required extraordinary secrets. But this lamp remained bright only because of ordinary care repeated every evening." Plato smiled gently. "So does every great life." The student finally understood. The hidden secret had never been hidden at all. Lasting transformation belongs to those who faithfully practice small acts of wisdom until they become character itself. The greatest manifestation is not wishing for a different life. It is becoming a different person, one deliberate choice at a time. Chapter 5. The Forgotten Law of Correspondence. There is an ancient saying preserved within the emerald tablet that has fascinated seekers for centuries. As above, so below. As within, so without. Few sentences have inspired more curiosity, and perhaps even fewer have been misunderstood more often. Many imagine these words promise that every thought instantly becomes reality, as though the universe obeys every passing wish. But the ancient Hermetic teachers described something far deeper. They spoke of correspondence, a hidden harmony linking the unseen world of consciousness with the visible world of daily life. Nothing appears from nothing. Every great civilization first existed as an idea. Every magnificent temple began as an invisible vision inside the architect's mind. Every lasting friendship first grew from invisible trust before it became visible loyalty. The unseen quietly gives birth to the seen. The Hermetic initiates believed that anyone wishing to understand life must first understand themselves, because the outer world continually reflects the quality of the inner one, not through magic, but through countless choices, perceptions, habits, and responses repeated over time. This is why the ancient masters spent far less time attempting to control events than they spent cultivating their own minds. They knew that changing the root eventually changes the fruit. The branch never determines the condition of the root. The root determines the branch. This law quietly operates in every area of life. Consider relationships. Two people may enter the same conversation carrying entirely different inner worlds. One arrives already expecting rejection. Every delayed reply feels like abandonment. Every disagreement sounds like criticism. Every silence becomes evidence that love is disappearing. The other enters with quiet confidence and goodwill. The same delayed reply is interpreted as busyness. The same disagreement becomes an opportunity for understanding. The same silence is simply a pause, not a threat. The conversation may be identical. The experience becomes completely different. The outer relationship often reflects the assumptions carried within. Modern psychology increasingly recognizes that expectations influence perception. People naturally notice evidence that confirms what they already believe, while overlooking information that challenges those beliefs. This tendency does not mean reality bends to every thought, but it does mean that our inner patterns influence what we notice, how we interpret situations, and the choices we make. The ancient Hermetic philosophers arrived at a similar insight through observation rather than laboratory experiments. They simply expressed it poetically, as within, so without. The same principle quietly shapes health. Imagine two gardeners caring for separate orchards. The first visits his trees only when fruit is expected. He waters inconsistently, neglects the soil, and grows frustrated whenever harvest disappoints him. The second understands that invisible roots require daily care long before visible fruit appears. He tends the earth patiently, removes weeds regularly, prunes unnecessary branches, and trusts the slow intelligence of nature. Years later, One orchard struggles while the other flourishes. Neither harvest appeared suddenly. Each reflected thousands of unseen decisions. Human well-being unfolds much the same way. Health is influenced by many factors, including genetics, environment, access to care, and circumstance. Yet daily habits, sleep, movement, nourishment, stress management, relationships, and hope also shape the path we walk. Inner order gradually expresses itself through outward discipline. The body often follows the mind's repeated intentions. Work reveals this law just as clearly. Many people search endlessly for the perfect opportunity while neglecting the qualities required to recognize and sustain it. Patience, reliability, humility, curiosity, integrity. These invisible qualities often determine visible success long before titles or recognition arrive. Ancient philosophers admired the craftsman who perfected his character before seeking applause. They believed excellence begins privately. Recognition arrives later. Plato expressed a similar vision through his theory of forms, suggesting that visible realities participate in deeper invisible principles. Before a sculptor shapes marble into beauty, he first carries an image of beauty within the mind. Creation begins invisibly. Only afterward does it become visible. Daily life quietly demonstrates this truth. An orderly desk rarely guarantees an orderly mind, but a disciplined mind often creates an orderly desk. A grateful heart notices opportunities that a resentful heart ignores. A peaceful person diffuses conflicts that an anxious person unintentionally intensifies. Our inner condition influences the world we help create. The correspondence is subtle, yet constant. Ancient temples themselves reflected this philosophy. Every doorway, every column, every sacred proportion mirrored what the priests believed existed within the human soul. Walking through the temple symbolized walking inward. Cleaning the sanctuary symbolized cleansing the heart. Lighting the sacred flame represented awakening consciousness itself. The outer ritual reminded participants of an inner reality. One elderly temple caretaker was once asked why he polished the stone floor every morning, although pilgrims continually covered it with dust. He smiled. "The floor reminds me of my own mind." Each day dust returned. Each day he cleaned again, not because dust would disappear forever, because clarity required faithful attention. The lesson extends into ordinary modern life. When resentment quietly occupies the mind, conversations become battles. When gratitude quietly occupies the mind, conversations become bridges. When fear dominates, possibilities shrink. When courage grows, opportunities appear. External circumstances may not immediately change, but our way of moving through them certainly does. And over time, those different responses often lead to different outcomes. That is correspondence in action, not instant magic. Steady transformation. The Hermetic teachers therefore encouraged students to ask a different question. Instead of asking, "Why is life happening to me?" they learned to ask, "What within me is asking to grow?" The answer often reveals the doorway to change. Perhaps impatience must become perseverance. Perhaps pride must become humility. Perhaps fear must become trust. The outer challenge often invites an inner refinement. When the refinement occurs, life frequently begins unfolding differently, not because the universe suddenly changed its rules, but because the individual now meets reality with greater wisdom. This is the hidden beauty of the law of correspondence. It invites responsibility without blame. It encourages self-examination without self-condemnation. It teaches that every day offers another opportunity to cultivate the invisible garden from which visible life grows. The mirror changes when the face changes. An old story tells of a master stonemason who worked near Alexandria during the later years of the Egyptian mystery schools. Young apprentices admired the magnificent temples he helped restore and asked how he carved such perfect stones. They expected him to reveal secret tools or hidden measurements. Instead, he handed each apprentice an uncut block of limestone. For 7 days, he said, "Do not touch the stone, only observe yourselves." The students were confused. One became impatient, another grew angry, a third doubted the lesson entirely. After a week, the master finally allowed them to begin carving. Their hurried emotions appeared in every strike of the chisel. Stones cracked, corners broke away, beautiful proportions were lost. Only one apprentice, who had spent the week quietly calming his thoughts before lifting the hammer, shaped a stone that fit perfectly beside every other block. The master placed his hand upon the finished work and said, "You believed you were carving the stone. In truth, the stone revealed the one holding the chisel." For generations, that lesson remained among the craftsmen. Every temple they built reminded them that lasting structures are raised twice. First within the heart, and only afterward in the world. The visible always follows the invisible. Chapter 6. The inner presence that creates true possession. Much of human suffering begins when we confuse force with effectiveness. We believe that if we worry more, we will accomplish more. If we hurry constantly, we will arrive sooner. If we cling tightly enough, life will finally obey our plans. Yet nature quietly teaches another lesson. The tallest trees never rush toward the sky. The rivers never argue with the mountains. The seasons never force their arrival. Stillness is not weakness. It is intelligent timing. The Tao Te Ching repeatedly reminds us that the strongest forces in nature often appear the gentlest. Water overcomes stone, not through violence, but through patient persistence. Wind reshapes forests without becoming exhausted. The moon influences entire oceans without making a sound. Ancient sages saw these rhythms as invitations rather than mere observations. They believed human beings flourish when their actions arise from clarity instead of desperation. Presence becomes more powerful than panic. This principle does not encourage passivity. The Taoist master still planted seeds. The farmer still tilled the soil. The physician still treated the sick. Action remained essential, but it was action born from awareness rather than anxiety. The difference is profound. Imagine two merchants opening identical shops. The first wakes every morning consumed by fear. Every quiet hour convinces him that failure is near. Every successful competitor becomes a threat. Every customer who leaves without buying deepens his panic. Soon his worry shapes his decisions. He rushes, argues, and exhausts himself. The second merchant begins each morning in stillness. He reviews his work carefully, greets customers sincerely, learns from mistakes, and steadily improves his craft. He cannot control every outcome, but he governs his conduct. Years later, their businesses may face similar challenges, yet their inner experience differs greatly. Presence produces wise action. Panic produces scattered effort. Modern psychology offers a similar insight. High levels of chronic stress narrow attention, reduce flexible thinking, and encourage impulsive decisions. A calmer, attentive state often supports better judgment, creativity, and problem-solving. Stillness is not mystical in this sense. It is also practical. The ancients reached this understanding through long observation of human nature. They simply described it with the language of wisdom. Another forgotten lesson concerns non-attachment. Many misunderstand this idea. They imagine it means caring about nothing. Quite the opposite. The Taoist sages cared deeply. They simply refuse to imprison their peace inside uncertain outcomes. A gardener waters faithfully, but cannot command the rain. A sailor prepares his ship, but cannot control the wind. A parent offers guidance, but cannot live another person's life. The wise perform their responsibilities with devotion, while accepting that not everything lies within their command. This freedom protects the heart from endless disappointment. The Stoics expressed a similar principle in different words. Epictetus taught that serenity grows when we distinguish between what belongs to us, our choices, character, and responses, and what belongs to fortune. Together, Taoism and Stoicism point toward the same hidden truth: act wholeheartedly, relâche obsessively. The combination creates remarkable peace. Presence also transforms relationships. How often do people hear only enough to prepare their next reply? How often do they eat without tasting, walk without noticing, or speak without listening? Life becomes mechanical. The present moment quietly disappears beneath endless mental noise. Yet genuine connection can exist only now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, only here. The ancient teachers often encouraged students to practice simple awareness before pursuing extraordinary experiences. Observe the breath. Notice the morning light. Feel gratitude before speaking. Walk without rushing. Listen without interrupting. These ordinary practices slowly awaken an extraordinary mind. The greatest manifestations of wisdom begin with attention. One old monk explained it beautifully. When drinking tea, he said, "Drink tea, nothing more, nothing less." The lesson appeared almost childish until his students discovered how rarely they actually inhabited the present moment. Their bodies drank tea, their minds argued with yesterday, or worried about tomorrow. Presence reunites the two. Gradually, life regains its richness. One conversation becomes meaningful. One sunrise becomes unforgettable. One ordinary meal becomes enough. Possession no longer determines abundance. Awareness does. This is why the ancient masters insisted that fulfillment cannot be postponed until external conditions become perfect. The peaceful mind creates meaningful moments wherever it stands. The restless mind remains dissatisfied even inside abundance. Possessions eventually age. Presence continually renews itself. An old account from travelers along the Silk Road tells of a potter in ancient Luoyang whose bowls were prized throughout distant kingdoms. Merchants believed he possessed secret clay or magical kilns. A young apprentice traveled for months to discover his method. For weeks, he watched carefully. The master worked slowly. He breathed before touching the wheel. He centered the clay before shaping it. He never hurried a single movement. Finally, the apprentice asked, "What is your secret?" The old potter smiled and placed an unformed lump of clay into the student's hands. "You are trying to shape the clay," he said, "but first, allow the clay to shape your attention." Years later, the apprentice became a master himself. Whenever visitors admired his beautiful vessels, he repeated the words of his teacher. The finest work appears only after the craftsman becomes fully present. And so it was said that the greatest masterpieces were never created by hurried hands. They were created by quiet minds. Chapter 7. The Hermetic Principles that Govern Reality. There is an old tradition that speaks of initiates entering the mystery schools of ancient Egypt before sunrise. They carried no weapons, no titles, and no wealth into those sacred halls. Instead, they entered carrying questions. The priests believed that the greatest battles were never fought against neighboring kingdoms, but within the human mind itself. Those who wished to understand the hidden order of life were not first taught rituals or ceremonies. They were taught principles, timeless laws believed to govern both the visible and the invisible worlds. Centuries later, these teachings became known through Hermetic philosophy and were summarized in the Kybalion as 7 principles. Whether one sees them as spiritual metaphors or philosophical frameworks, they invite careful reflection rather than blind belief. They were never intended as magical formulas. They were practical guides for living with greater awareness. The first principle is mentalism. The all is mind. This statement has fascinated readers for generations, yet its meaning is often misunderstood. The Hermetic teachers did not suggest that every passing thought instantly reshapes the universe. Rather, they observed that every human experience is filtered through consciousness. 2 people may walk through the same storm. One remembers only discomfort. The other remembers the beauty of rain nourishing the earth. The weather remains identical. Their experience becomes entirely different. Modern psychology echoes this insight. Attention, expectation, and interpretation profoundly influence how people experience life. Our minds do not merely receive reality, they help organize it into meaning. Guard the mind first. The second principle is correspondence. As above, so below, as within, so without. This principle reminds us that patterns repeat across different levels of existence. A disordered inner life often produces confused decisions. A peaceful inner life encourages wiser action. Relationships frequently mirror the attitudes we consistently bring into them. The world may not instantly transform, but our responses gradually reshape the lives we build. The third principle is vibration. Nothing in nature remains completely still. Ancient philosophers observed rivers flowing, flames dancing, leaves trembling in the wind, and stars moving across the heavens. Today, science also describes reality as dynamic, from vibrating molecules to waves of energy. The Hermetic teachers used vibration as a reminder that emotions, thoughts, habits, and relationships are never frozen. Anger changes, joy changes, fear changes. Even sorrow eventually softens. Because everything moves, transformation remains possible. No season lasts forever. The fourth principle is polarity. The Hermetic sages noticed that many opposites are connected rather than completely separate. Hot and cold belong to temperature. Darkness and light belong to illumination. Fear and courage often exist within the same heart. An individual who has never known fear cannot truly demonstrate courage, for courage is not the absence of fear but wise action despite it. Ancient Stoics expressed a similar understanding. They did not seek lives without hardship. They sought minds capable of meeting hardship honorably. The opposite often hides nearby. The fifth principle is rhythm. Observe the tides. Observe the seasons. Observe your own breathing. Nature moves in cycles rather than straight lines. Life follows similar rhythms. There are seasons of abundance and seasons of waiting, moments of confidence and moments of uncertainty, periods of rapid growth followed by quiet reflection. Many people become discouraged because they expect uninterrupted progress. The ancient teachers expected rhythm instead. They understood that temporary setbacks often prepare future advancement. Just as winter quietly prepares the soil for spring, patience honors rhythm. The sixth principle is cause and effect. Nothing meaningful appears without preceding causes. The harvest reflects months of cultivation. Wisdom reflects years of disciplined learning. Trust reflects repeated honesty. Every consequence carries a history. People often call events luck, while overlooking the countless invisible habits that quietly prepared those outcomes. This principle encourages responsibility without harshness. Every choice becomes a seed. Every repeated action becomes a direction. Destiny rarely arrives suddenly. More often, it grows gradually through ordinary decisions made consistently over time. Today's choices become tomorrow's circumstances. The seventh principle is gender. Among all the Hermetic teachings, this is perhaps the most misunderstood. The principle was not primarily about biological sex. Rather, ancient philosophers used masculine and feminine as symbolic language, describing complementary qualities found within every person: the active and the receptive, reason and intuition, strength and compassion, determination and patience. Creation often requires both. A farmer must actively prepare the field, yet he must also patiently receive the seasons. A sculptor shapes marble with disciplined effort, while remaining receptive to the form gradually emerging beneath the stone. Wisdom grows through balance. When viewed together, these 7 principles reveal an extraordinary vision of life. They do not encourage passive wishing. They encourage conscious participation. They remind us that inner character quietly influences outward conduct, that change unfolds through steady causes rather than sudden miracles, and that life continually invites greater awareness. Imagine an ordinary morning. Mentalism reminds you to guard your first thoughts. Correspondence encourages beginning the day with inner order. Vibration reminds you that today's discouragement is temporary. Polarity helps you discover opportunity inside difficulty. Rhythm teaches patience when progress feels slow. Cause and effect inspires wise choices even when results remain unseen. Gender invites both decisive action and peaceful trust. The principles become less like mystical doctrines and more like companions for daily living. The Hermetic teachers believed knowledge alone changed very little. Only lived wisdom transforms character. The true initiate was not recognized by mysterious robes or hidden ceremonies, but by calm judgment, balanced conduct, disciplined attention, and quiet compassion. Life became the temple. Character became the ritual. Awareness became the greatest initiation. An old tradition from Alexandria tells of a master architect commissioned to construct a bridge across a broad river. Instead of beginning immediately, he spent several weeks simply watching the water. His impatient assistants whispered among themselves, "Why does he waste so much time?" Finally, the old builder spoke. "The river has already begun teaching me." He observed where the current strengthened and where it weakened. He studied the rhythm of the tides, the changing winds, the firmness of the earth, and the balance of every stone. When construction finally began, the bridge stood firm for generations, while many neighboring bridges collapsed after only a few floods. Before his death, one apprentice asked how he had learned to build so wisely. The old architect smiled. "I did not force the river to obey me. I first learned the laws the river already followed. So it is with life. Those who understand its deeper principles stop struggling against every current and begin working with the quiet order already woven into creation." Chapter 8. How Gratitude Opens Perception. There is an old saying among the desert monks of Egypt: "The thankful eye sees springs where the complaining eye sees only sand." At first, these words seem poetic, yet they describe one of the deepest transformations known to both ancient philosophy and modern psychology. Gratitude changes not only how we feel, it changes what we notice. Many people imagine gratitude as little more than polite manners or cheerful optimism. The ancient teachers understood it differently. They viewed gratitude as a discipline of perception, a deliberate practice that trained the mind to recognize abundance already present before constantly searching for what remained absent. This practice appeared across civilizations. Hebrew elders began their mornings with blessings. Greek philosophers paused before meals in quiet appreciation. Roman Stoics reflected each evening upon gifts received during the day. Buddhist monks expressed gratitude even for the simple bowl from which they ate. Ancient Egyptians thanked the rising sun not because every day was easy, but because every sunrise represented another opportunity to live wisely. They understood something timeless. Attention grows where gratitude goes. Consider two travelers walking through the same village. One notices cracked walls, dusty roads, and imperfect weather. He leaves convinced the village possesses little worth. The other notices children laughing beneath olive trees, neighbors sharing bread, craftsmen patiently shaping wood, and elderly friends greeting one another with warm smiles. Both travelers visited the same place, yet they inhabited different worlds. Their attention created different experiences. Modern research increasingly suggests that regularly practicing gratitude can strengthen emotional resilience, improve well-being, and help people notice supportive relationships and positive experiences more readily. It does not erase hardship or deny suffering. Rather, it broadens awareness so that difficulty does not become the only thing we see. The ancients discovered this through observation long before laboratories existed. Gratitude widens vision. The Hermetic philosophers believed that receptivity followed appreciation. A tightly closed hand cannot receive another gift. Likewise, a mind convinced it possesses nothing often overlooks opportunities already standing quietly before it. Imagine a farmer preparing his fields. If he spends every day complaining about last year's drought, he may neglect today's planting season. Another farmer remembers the drought as well, yet he also notices healthy soil, faithful neighbors, fresh seed, and the returning rain. Hope encourages action. Action creates harvest. Gratitude becomes practical wisdom. This principle quietly influences relationships. How often do friendships fade because appreciation remains unspoken? How many families carry unnecessary distance because gratitude was assumed rather than expressed? The ancient teachers encouraged people to speak appreciation while time still allowed it. Tomorrow remains uncertain. Today's kindness does not. Gratitude also softens fear. When people continually focus upon what might be lost, anxiety grows stronger. When they remember what has already been given, courage quietly returns. This does not eliminate life's uncertainties. It changes our posture toward them. An old Stoic once wrote that wealth is measured less by possessions than by one's ability to recognize enough. One of the most liberating words ever spoken. Many spend entire lives chasing a horizon that continually moves farther away. The next promotion, the next purchase, the next achievement, the next season. The ancients gently asked another question: can you recognize abundance before acquiring more? This question transforms the heart. It also strengthens resilience. Those who appreciate small blessings endure difficult seasons with greater steadiness because hope has many roots. A warm meal, a faithful friend, a healthy breath, a lesson learned through hardship. Even sorrow itself may deepen compassion for others. The grateful person does not deny pain. They refuse to let pain become the whole story. Presence grows naturally from gratitude. When drinking water, truly taste it. When listening, truly hear. When walking, notice the sky. Ordinary moments quietly become extraordinary. The Taoist sages often reminded their students that the greatest treasures rarely arrive wearing magnificent clothing. They come disguised as ordinary mornings, the smile of a stranger, the fragrance of fresh bread, a peaceful evening after honest work, a conversation that heals an old wound. Life whispers its greatest gifts, Only attentive hearts hear them. For this reason, many ancient traditions ended each day with reflection, not to count achievements, but to count blessings. One blessing becomes two, two become 10. Eventually, gratitude no longer feels like an exercise. It becomes a way of seeing. The world itself appears transformed, not because mountains moved or fortunes suddenly arrived, but because the observer awakened to treasures that had quietly surrounded them all along. The grateful heart receives more from ordinary life than the restless heart receives from extraordinary circumstances. Abundance often begins with attention. A story preserved among Mediterranean villages tells of an elderly keeper of olive groves who lived through years of famine, storms, and political unrest. Visitors often wondered why he remained peaceful despite repeated hardship. One autumn evening, a young merchant asked him, "What secret has kept your heart so light?" The old man led him beneath an ancient olive tree planted by his grandfather. He pointed upward. "Every year this tree loses nearly every leaf, yet every spring it begins again." The merchant nodded. "But what has that taught you?" The old keeper smiled gently. "Each evening I thank life for 3 things before I sleep. Some nights they are great blessings. Some nights they are only bread, breath, and tomorrow." He placed one weathered hand upon the rough bark. The tree survives because its roots remember the earth. Even when its branches feel the winter, so must we. For generations, the villagers repeated his words whenever difficult seasons returned. And many discovered that gratitude did not remove the winter. It simply reminded the soul that spring had never forgotten the way home. Chapter 9. The Stillness of Unshakable Faith. Faith is not certainty about tomorrow. Faith is steadiness within uncertainty. Many people confuse faith with wishful thinking. Others mistake it for blind optimism that refuses to acknowledge danger. The philosophers, sages, and mystics of the ancient world understood faith very differently. To them, faith was disciplined trust. It was the ability to continue walking wisely even when the entire path could not yet be seen. The farmer plants before seeing the harvest. The sailor raises the sail before the wind changes. The craftsman begins shaping raw stone before the finished sculpture exists. None of them possess guarantees, yet all of them possess faith expressed through action. This kind of faith carries no panic. It carries quiet confidence. Throughout history, impatient minds have often mistaken anxiety for responsibility. They believe that constant worrying proves they care deeply enough. Yet worry rarely improves judgment. More often, it scatters attention, weakens perception, and drains the energy needed for wise action. The Stoics recognized this centuries ago. Epictetus taught that peace emerges when we distinguish between what belongs to us and what belongs to fortune. Our effort belongs to us. Our character belongs to us. Our honesty, patience, and perseverance belong to us. Outcomes, however, remain influenced by countless forces beyond individual control. The wise, therefore, focus their strength where it can truly serve them. Imagine 2 archers standing before identical targets. The first becomes obsessed with the result. His hands tremble. His breathing grows shallow. Every missed practice shot convinces him that failure is inevitable. The second attends carefully to his stance, his breathing, and the steady release of the bowstring. He desires success, yet his attention remains on the process rather than the outcome. Ironically, the calmer archer often proves the more accurate. This principle appears repeatedly throughout life. Parents cannot control every choice their children will one day make. Teachers cannot guarantee every student will learn. Physicians cannot promise every illness will heal. Entrepreneurs cannot command every market to prosper. Yet, each may still perform their duties with excellence. Faith does not eliminate uncertainty. It teaches us how to live gracefully within it. Modern psychology describes something remarkably similar through the idea of psychological flexibility. Individuals who adapt without becoming overwhelmed often recover more effectively from setbacks than those who insist reality must always unfold exactly as planned. The ancient philosophers simply expressed this wisdom differently. Flow with life. Do not wrestle every current. This does not mean abandoning ambition. Quite the opposite. Healthy ambition walks beside patience. Desperation outruns wisdom. An old Taoist teacher once compared anxious striving to muddy water. The harder you stir it, he said, the less clearly you see. But leave it undisturbed. The water clears itself. Many of life's answers emerge this way, not through frantic searching. Through quiet observation, faith also changes the quality of action. When fear dominates, people rush into poor decisions simply to escape discomfort. They abandon meaningful work too early. They destroy relationships with suspicion. They chase every new opportunity without finishing the last one. Their lives become reactions instead of deliberate choices. Calm expectation produces something entirely different. It encourages consistent effort, small improvements, patient learning, steady perseverance. The ancient builders of great temples understood this well. They laid one stone each day with extraordinary care, knowing they would likely never witness the completed sanctuary. Their faith did not depend upon immediate results. It rested in the knowledge that faithful work accumulates. Stone by stone, day by day, character grows the same way. Many traditions also spoke of surrender. Not surrender through defeat, but surrender through trust. The sailor cannot command the wind, yet he can adjust the sails. The gardener cannot order the rain, yet she can prepare the soil. Human wisdom lies not in controlling everything, but in cooperating with what life presents. This balance transforms anxiety into resilience. Instead of asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" the wise ask, "What is the next honorable step?" One question breeds fear, the other invites action. Perhaps this is why the oldest spiritual traditions repeatedly joined faith with patience. The seed buried beneath the earth appears lifeless, yet unseen growth has already begun. The impatient gardener digs constantly to inspect the roots. The wise gardener continues watering. Growth often hides before it appears. So does transformation. The individual who trusts the process without abandoning effort gradually discovers that peace and productivity are not enemies. They are companions. Faith gives action its endurance. Action gives faith its expression. Together, they create a life that moves steadily forward without being driven by panic. The calm heart often travels farther than the hurried one. An old account tells of a stone builder who was commissioned to construct a bridge across a deep valley in Cappadocia. Each morning, villagers gathered to watch. After several weeks, they became impatient. "There is still no bridge," they complained. "We see only scattered stones." The builder smiled but answered nothing. Season after season, he continued placing one carefully measured stone upon another. Years later, merchants, pilgrims, and entire caravans crossed safely where once only dangerous cliffs had stood. A young apprentice finally asked the old builder why he never hurried despite constant criticism. The master rested his hand upon the finished arch. Those who feared the future counted unfinished stones. I trusted the design hidden within them. Long after the builder was gone, travelers still crossed his bridge, and many remembered that lasting works are not built by anxious hands. They are built by faithful ones. Chapter 10. Manifesting Wealth Wisely. In every civilization, wealth has been admired. Yet among the wisest civilizations, wealth was also questioned. The philosophers of Greece, the temple schools of Egypt, the Stoics of Rome, and the sages of the East all asked a deeper question than simply, "How can one become rich?" They asked, "What kind of person should become rich?" For they understood that prosperity magnifies character more than it replaces it. A generous heart often becomes more generous. A greedy heart often becomes more restless. Money enlarges tendencies already present. This is why the ancients placed character before fortune. Long before merchants carried gold across the Silk Road, there lived a respected trader whose caravans reached nearly every known kingdom. Though his success became legendary, visitors noticed something unusual. His warehouse doors remained open. Travelers received food without payment. Widows were quietly supported. Apprentices learned the trade without charge. When asked why he gave away so much of what he had earned, he replied, "Wealth is safest while it is moving." His answer puzzled many. Years later they understood. His generosity created trust. Trust created loyal friendships. Friendships created enduring prosperity that no thief could steal. Ancient wealth consciousness differed greatly from modern obsession with accumulation. To possess resources carried responsibility, not merely privilege. The Egyptians believed abundance should preserve harmony within society. The Greeks taught moderation. The Stoics viewed wealth as a useful tool, but a dangerous master. The Taoists warned against endless craving. Despite their differences, they shared one conviction: own your possessions. Never allow your possessions to own you. Stewardship became the hidden secret. A steward understands that everything entrusted to them should be cared for wisely. Time, health, relationships, knowledge, money, even influence. Nothing exists merely for selfish display. Everything becomes an opportunity to serve. Consider two landowners. One sees his fields only as a means of increasing personal luxury. The other sees fertile land as a responsibility to feed families, employ workers fairly, and leave healthy soil for future generations. Both possess identical acreage. Only one leaves a lasting legacy. Dorfus quietly multiplies value. This principle appears even in ordinary professions. A physician who genuinely desires healing often inspires greater trust. A teacher who loves learning awakens curiosity in others. An artisan who values excellence creates work remembered long after cheaper alternatives disappear. Prosperity frequently follows usefulness. The ancients noticed this long before economics attempted to explain it. People naturally seek those who consistently contribute value. Integrity protects abundance. Without it, wealth becomes fragile. History overflows with rulers who accumulated unimaginable treasures only to lose everything through arrogance or corruption. History also remembers humble individuals whose honorable conduct outlived every empire. Character becomes a form of invisible capital. It compounds quietly. Modern life sometimes encourages the opposite illusion. It suggests that appearance matters more than substance. That recognition outweighs reputation. That speed surpasses wisdom. Yet ancient philosophy repeatedly reminds us that foundations determine longevity. A magnificent palace built upon unstable ground eventually collapses. So does success unsupported by integrity. There is another form of wealth easily overlooked: the wealth of attention, the wealth of health, the wealth of trusted friendships, the wealth of peaceful sleep, the wealth of meaningful work. Many people possess overflowing bank accounts while remaining poor in nearly every other category. Others live modestly yet enjoy abundant relationships, deep purpose, physical vitality, and inner peace. Which life is truly richer? Seneca once suggested that the richest person is not the one who possesses the most, but the one who requires the least to experience contentment. This is not an argument against financial success. Rather, it places success within proper order. Money can purchase comfort. It cannot purchase wisdom. It can buy medicine, not health itself. It can purchase a house, not a loving home. It can provide opportunity. But character determines what becomes of that opportunity. Managing wealth wisely, therefore, begins much earlier than income. It begins with the kind of person one is becoming: the disciplined saver, the honest worker, the faithful friend, the lifelong learner, the generous neighbor. These qualities often create opportunities invisible to those seeking only quick rewards, like healthy roots nourishing a great tree. Inner virtues quietly sustain outward prosperity. The Hermetic teachers believed that creation unfolds from the invisible toward the visible. Plato taught that enduring realities first exist as ideals. The Stoics insisted that virtue is life's highest good. Together, their voices suggest a profound truth: become worthy of abundance before seeking abundance. Then prosperity, whatever form it takes, becomes a blessing rather than a burden. The greatest fortune remains invisible. It is a life guided by wisdom. An old account from the island of Rhodes tells of a merchant whose ships survived storms that destroyed many competing fleets. People assumed he possessed extraordinary luck. One young sailor finally asked for his secret. The merchant invited him into a simple room containing only a wooden table, several scrolls, and a worn ledger. "There is no hidden treasure?" the sailor asked. The old merchant smiled. "There is." He opened the ledger. Every page recorded fair wages paid, debts settled honestly, families helped during famine, and promises faithfully kept. "This," he said, "is the fortune that protected every ship." The sailor looked confused. The merchant continued, "When storms came, honest captains sailed with me. When famine came, friends shared grain with me. When markets changed, trusted partners remained beside me. My greatest wealth was never stored in my warehouses. It lived inside the confidence of those who knew my character." For generations, traders repeated his words. Throughout the ports of the Mediterranean, many earned fortunes. Only a few earned trust. The wise understood which treasure would outlast them both. Chapter 11. The Ancient Art of Manifesting a Meaningful Life. Ancient philosophy rarely separated success from meaning. Prosperity without wisdom eventually becomes another burden. Health without purpose becomes fragile. Achievement without contribution becomes strangely empty. A meaningful life, they believed, rests upon three quiet pillars: right relationship with wealth, faithful care of the body and mind, and a legacy that continues through character rather than possessions. These three together create a life that remains rich long after circumstances begin to change. The first pillar is wealth consciousness. Modern society often treats money as the destination. Ancient wisdom treated it as a servant. In the marketplaces of ancient Athens, merchants were respected not because they accumulated gold, but because they used prosperity to strengthen families, support communities, and preserve justice. Wealth was considered a tool entrusted to responsible hands rather than proof of personal superiority. An old story tells of two brothers who inherited equal fortunes from their father. The first immediately built magnificent estates, filled them with expensive decorations, and spent his days trying to impress influential people. Every new purchase required another. Every success demanded something greater. His fortune expanded, but so did his anxiety. The second brother quietly repaired neglected farms, paid honest wages, educated village children, and kept careful records of every coin entrusted to him. His home remained modest, yet his influence quietly spread through every family he helped. Years later, a drought devastated the region. The first brother found himself surrounded by empty luxury. The second was surrounded by grateful neighbors. Both possessed money. Only one possessed wealth. The ancient philosophers understood something remarkably practical. Prosperity becomes stable when guided by stewardship rather than greed. A generous heart attracts trustworthy relationships. An honest reputation opens opportunities. A disciplined mind preserves what impulsiveness quickly loses. Even modern psychology confirms that financial well-being depends not only upon income, but also upon habits, delayed gratification, wise planning, and emotional discipline. Money follows character far more often than people imagine. The second pillar is health. Ancient healers never divided the human being into isolated parts. The body, mind, emotions, and spirit were viewed as companions walking together. The physician might recommend herbs. The philosopher recommended wisdom. The teacher recommended moderation. Each understood that lasting health grows from daily habits rather than dramatic moments. The Upanishads spoke of inner harmony. Greek philosophers praised moderation. The Tao Te Ching encouraged balance instead of excess. Though their languages differed, their message remained remarkably similar. Care for the unseen, and the visible often follows. Today we know that hope, purpose, supportive relationships, consistent routines, restful sleep, movement, and emotional resilience all influence health alongside proper medical care. Ancient teachers did not possess modern science, yet, through careful observation, they recognized that despair weakens vitality, while hope often strengthens perseverance. Consider an elderly gardener who rises before sunrise every morning. He waters his plants slowly. He stretches his aging limbs. He shares tea with his neighbors. He thanks the Creator for another day. His movements are ordinary, yet they quietly preserve his strength. He is not chasing youth. He is honoring life. Health is rarely built in extraordinary moments. It is built in ordinary mornings, repeated faithfully. The body remembers what the mind repeatedly practices. The third pillar is legacy. Many people imagine legacy as something reserved for rulers, inventors, or famous names written into history. Ancient wisdom offered another definition. Legacy is the invisible influence your character leaves inside other people. Long after buildings collapse, conversations remain. Long after fortunes disappear, kindness survives. Long after names fade, wisdom continues traveling from one heart to another. There is a cherished story from ancient China about an elderly teacher whose school contained no expensive furniture, no decorated halls, and no impressive gates. Visitors often wondered why students traveled enormous distances simply to sit beneath the shade of ordinary trees. One traveler finally asked, "What secret knowledge do you possess?" The old teacher smiled. "I teach them to become people others feel safe beside. Nothing more, nothing less." Decades passed. His students became judges, physicians, farmers, craftsmen, scholars, parents, and community leaders. Many forgot individual lessons. None forgot the kind of person he had been. That became his legacy. Modern life often measures influence by numbers. Ancient wisdom measured influence by transformation. How many lives became more peaceful because you entered them? How many burdens became lighter because you listened? How many fears became smaller because you remained calm? These are the questions that outlive every possession. Plato once suggested that every visible achievement begins as an invisible ideal. Before a sculptor shapes marble, he first holds the completed image within his imagination. Likewise, before a meaningful life appears outwardly, it quietly forms inwardly through repeated choices. Meaning is not discovered in one extraordinary event. It accumulates through thousands of ordinary decisions, one honest conversation, one generous act, one promise faithfully kept, one difficult forgiveness, one courageous beginning. Each seems small, together they become a life. There is another truth older generations often understand with remarkable clarity. Possessions eventually belong to someone else. Homes change owners. Businesses find new managers. Even family heirlooms continue traveling through history. Only character remains permanently connected to the one who cultivated it. The Stoics therefore encouraged people to ask each evening not, "What did I gain today?" but rather, "Who did I become today?" The answer quietly determines tomorrow. Perhaps this explains why many elderly people radiate unusual peace despite modest circumstances. They have gradually discovered that life's deepest fulfillment rarely arrives through acquiring more. It grows through appreciating more. They have learned that enough often arrives long before we recognize it. Meaning, then, is not waiting somewhere in the distant future. It is quietly created through the way we think, work, love, forgive, and serve today. A meaningful life is not built by extraordinary moments. It is built by extraordinary presence within ordinary moments. One final story has survived through generations of monastic tradition. A young disciple once asked an elderly abbot, "Master, after all these years, what have your prayers given you?" The old man laughed softly. "They have not given me more possessions," he replied. "They have given me eyes that finally recognize what was already enough." That was his greatest wealth. That became his greatest legacy. A meaningful life begins long before the world notices it. It begins the moment the soul chooses purpose over possession. Chapter 12. The Daily Practice of a Conscious Creator. The oldest temples rarely admitted students immediately. Before entering sacred chambers, initiates were often asked to perform remarkably simple tasks for many weeks. Sweep the courtyard, rise before sunrise, sit in silence, observe your thoughts, record your actions, speak only when necessary. Many grew impatient. They had traveled great distances expecting secret rituals and hidden ceremonies. Instead, they received ordinary disciplines. Only years later did they understand the lesson. The greatest mysteries were never hidden behind locked doors. They were hidden inside consistent daily practice. Ancient wisdom never separated knowledge from habit. To know truth without living, it was considered incomplete understanding. The corpus hermeticum repeatedly points towards self-knowledge. Stoicism points toward disciplined action. Plato emphasizes shaping the invisible before expecting visible results. The Tao teaches effortless harmony. Though each tradition speaks differently, they quietly converge upon one remarkable principle: your days become your destiny. Not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through faithful repetition. The conscious creator, therefore, begins each morning before the noise of the world enters the mind. Imagine an elderly philosopher walking through a quiet olive grove before sunrise. He carries no audience, no applause follows him, only silence. He sits beneath an old tree while the sky slowly changes from darkness to gold. Before speaking to anyone else, he first listens to himself. What thoughts arrived during the night? Which fears still remain? Which hopes deserve attention? Which resentments quietly ask to be released? Morning silence is not empty. It is preparation. Like calm water reflecting the moon more clearly than turbulent waves, a quiet mind begins seeing reality without unnecessary distortion. Even 10 or 15 minutes of intentional stillness can gradually reshape an entire day. From silence comes visualization. Ancient people often misunderstood imagination neither as fantasy nor escape, but as rehearsal. Greek athletes mentally practiced movements before competitions. Craftsmen pictured completed temples before lifting the first stone. Plato suggested that visible creations follow invisible forms. Visualization therefore becomes meaningful only when joined with responsibility. Do not merely imagine becoming patient. Practice patience. Do not merely picture generosity. Become generous. Lime the inner picture to guide outward behavior. Vision without action remains unfinished. Action gives vision a body. The next discipline is journaling. Marcus Aurelius unknowingly created one of history's greatest journals. His meditations were not written for readers. They were written to remind himself how to think wisely. Writing slows thought. High assumptions become visible. Confusion begins organizing itself. Many ancient monks ended each evening by recording 3 simple reflections. What strengthened me today? Where did I lose awareness? How shall I begin again tomorrow? Such questions quietly transform ordinary days into lifelong education. The greatest teacher often becomes honest reflection. Affirmations have also appeared in many traditions, though not always under that modern name. Ancient Hebrew prayers, Buddhist chants, Stoic reminders, and Hermetic declarations all served a similar purpose. They repeatedly directed attention toward enduring truth. Yet the ancients would likely offer one important correction. Words alone possess little power unless behavior agrees with them. A person cannot repeat, "I value health," while consistently neglecting the body. One cannot declare abundance while acting from constant fear. Integrity joins speech and action. The strongest affirmation is a life that quietly confirms its own words. Each faithful action reinforces identity. Behavior becomes belief made visible. As the day unfolds, awareness becomes the greatest discipline. Observe reactions before obeying them. Notice assumptions before believing them. Watch emotions before allowing them to command decisions. This gentle observation gradually weakens unconscious habit. Modern psychology calls this metacognition. Ancient sages simply called it awakening. The practice is remarkably simple. Pause, notice, choose, repeat. Small pauses eventually create profound freedom. Evening then becomes the final classroom. Long before sleep, ancient philosophers often reviewed the entire day without harsh judgment. They celebrated progress. They acknowledged mistakes. They forgave themselves. Then they quietly prepared to begin again. Seneca encouraged this practice because improvement belongs to those willing to examine themselves honestly. No day is wasted when it teaches wisdom. There is an old Egyptian story about an aging temple scribe who had copied sacred texts for more than 60 years. A visitor once asked him why he continued practicing the same disciplines after becoming one of the wisest men in the temple. The scribe smiled without looking up from his work. "Because every sunrise introduces me to someone I have not fully mastered, myself." That answer contains perhaps the greatest secret of conscious living. Growth never truly ends. There will always be another fear inviting courage, another disappointment inviting patience, another success inviting humility, another opportunity inviting service. The conscious creator, therefore, does not seek perfection. He seeks faithful refinement. Like an alchemist patiently transforming lead into gold, he understands that real transformation happens gradually. One thought becomes one decision. One decision becomes one habit. One habit becomes one character. One character becomes one life. Perhaps this is why the wisest people often appear the calmest. They are no longer chasing extraordinary moments. They are carefully honoring ordinary ones. Their mornings begin with silence. Their actions follow intention. Their evenings end with reflection. Their lives slowly become their greatest teaching. An ancient storyteller once concluded every lesson with the same quiet sentence: "The temple you seek is built one faithful day at a time." The years simply reveal what the days have already created. Chapter 13. The Great Return to the Self. Among the oldest inscriptions ever carved into stone is a simple invitation that has echoed through civilizations for thousands of years. Know yourself. The philosophers of Greece pursued it through reason. The Hermetic sages sought it through contemplation. The ancient Egyptians approached it through sacred initiation. The Stoics practiced it through daily discipline. The Taoist masters discovered it through effortless harmony. The seers of the Upanishads entered it through meditation until the restless mind became still enough to recognize something timeless beneath every passing thought. Different roads, one destination. History often celebrates conquerors who reshaped nations, yet the ancient masters quietly admired another kind of hero. The person who could remain peaceful while surrounded by chaos, truthful when deception appeared profitable, compassionate when resentment felt easier, and humble after success invited pride. To them, this was the highest victory, not mastery over others, mastery over oneself. There is an old story from Alexandria about a brilliant scholar who spent decades collecting the world's greatest books. His library became famous across distant lands. Travelers came seeking answers to difficult questions, believing no one possessed greater knowledge. One afternoon, an elderly monk arrived carrying nothing but a wooden staff. The scholar welcomed him proudly and displayed shelves filled with rare scrolls from Greece, Persia, Egypt, and India. After many hours, the scholar finally asked, "Tell me honestly, what do you think of my collection?" The monk smiled kindly. "You have gathered many voices." He paused. "But have you listened to your own?" Those few words unsettled the scholar more deeply than any criticism. For many months afterward, he closed the library before sunset and walked alone beside the sea. Instead of searching another scroll for wisdom, he began observing his own thoughts. Slowly he discovered something surprising. He had mastered arguments. He had never mastered himself. The ancient teachers repeatedly warned against confusing information with transformation. Knowledge fills the memory. Awareness reshapes the person. Many people spend years studying philosophy while remaining prisoners of anger, comparison, fear, or pride. Others possess little formal education, yet quietly embody patience, gratitude, courage, and compassion in every conversation. The ancients always recognized which person had learned more. Self-knowledge is not accumulating answers. It is becoming honest enough to ask better questions. Why does criticism disturb me? Why does praise control me? Why do certain fears return repeatedly? What belief quietly governs my decisions? Every sincere question becomes a doorway. Psychology today increasingly supports what these ancient traditions observed through experience. Much of human behavior operates automatically. Habits guide perception. Expectations influence attention. Emotional reactions often appear before conscious reflection. Without awareness, yesterday quietly repeats itself. The same worries, the same arguments, the same assumptions, the same emotional patterns. Life appears to change while the inner observer remains asleep. Ancient philosophy called this unconscious living. The modern world often rewards speed. Ancient wisdom honored pause. Between every event and every response lives a small, almost invisible space. Within that space rests freedom. Imagine a blacksmith shaping iron inside a quiet workshop. Each strike of his hammer is deliberate, never rushed, never careless. One impatient blow can damage hours of careful work. The human mind is shaped in exactly the same manner. Each reaction strengthens a habit. Each pause creates another possibility. Eventually, character itself becomes the result of thousands of tiny moments that almost no one notices. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. Before speaking, pause. Before judging, pause. Before becoming angry, pause. Not because emotion is wrong, but because wisdom deserves the first voice. The Taoist sages offered similar counsel. The river never struggles against every stone. It simply continues flowing. Its strength comes not from force but from harmony. Likewise, awareness rarely argues with emotion. It quietly observes until clarity naturally appears. This gentle discipline transforms ordinary life. Argument become conversations. Problems become teachers. Disappointments become opportunities for refinement. The world itself may remain unchanged. The one experiencing it becomes profoundly different. The Corpus Hermeticum taught that humanity participates in the divine mind through conscious awareness. This does not mean controlling reality through wishful thinking. Rather, it suggests that the quality of our consciousness shapes how wisely we participate in the life unfolding before us. A fearful mind notices danger everywhere. A grateful mind notices opportunity. An angry mind finds enemies. A peaceful mind discovers understanding. The external world often remains remarkably similar. The observer quietly changes. Plato suggested that before any great structure appears in stone, it first exists as an invisible form within the mind of the builder. Character follows the same law. Every noble action begins as an invisible decision. Every generous life begins as an unnoticed thought. Every meaningful legacy begins with private habits that no audience ever applauds. The invisible always precedes the visible. This is why the ancient schools devoted years to preparing the student before assigning responsibility. Power without self-knowledge becomes dangerous. Influence without humility becomes corruption. Success without awareness becomes another prison. Only those who govern themselves wisely could safely guide others. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding of self-knowledge is believing that it ends. It never does. Each decade reveals another layer. Youth teaches ambition. Middle years teach responsibility. Old age often teaches perspective. The journey continues until life's final breath. One evening, according to an old desert tradition, a young disciple asked his teacher, "Master, when will I know that I have finally found myself?" The old man smiled as the sun disappeared beyond the dunes. When the person you meet in silence becomes your closest friend, nothing more was needed. The greatest return is never to a forgotten place. It is the quiet return to the deepest part of yourself that has patiently waited beneath every distraction. The path home has always begun within. Chapter 14. Becoming the Living Alchemist. The ancient alchemists have often been misunderstood. Many imagine them spending lonely nights attempting to transform ordinary lead into shining gold. Certainly, some pursued physical experiments, but the greatest teachers left behind symbols suggesting a far deeper mystery. The true laboratory was the human heart. The true metals were habits, emotions, and beliefs. The greatest transformation was never chemical. It was spiritual. Lead represented fear. Gold represented wisdom. The furnace represented experience. The fire represented life itself. Every disappointment, every hardship, every unexpected loss became another opportunity for refinement. The greatest alchemist was not the one who changed metal. It was the one who changed himself. There is an ancient story from Egypt about a young apprentice who traveled many weeks to study beneath a respected temple master. Believing he would be taught powerful hidden rituals, he eagerly awaited his first lesson. Instead, the master handed him a broom. For 1 year, the apprentice swept the temple courtyard before sunrise. No sacred scrolls, no mysterious ceremonies, only quiet work. Growing impatient, he finally asked, "Master, when will I learn the secret of transformation?" The old teacher placed the broom back into his hands. "You already are." The apprentice looked confused. The master continued, "A year ago you swept with resentment. Today you sweep with gratitude. The courtyard looks the same. You do not." That was alchemy. Real transformation rarely announces itself dramatically. It quietly changes the one who practices it. Fear becomes courage, not because danger disappears, but because courage learns to walk beside uncertainty. The Stoics understood this well. They never promised lives without difficulty. They trained themselves to meet difficulty with steadiness. An ancient Roman soldier once confessed to his commander that he was terrified before every battle. The commander nodded. "So am I." The young soldier looked surprised. "Then why do you continue?" "Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing duty despite it." That lesson has survived for centuries because it reflects a permanent truth. Fear often remains. Wisdom simply refuses to obey it. Scarcity undergoes a similar transformation. Many people believe abundance begins when possessions increase. Ancient philosophy suggested another possibility. Abundance begins when stewardship replaces anxiety. Imagine two farmers receiving identical fields. The first constantly worries that there will never be enough rain, enough harvest, or enough profit. Fear governs every decision. He exhausts himself, protecting what he has yet never enjoys any of it. The second farmer works with equal diligence, but begins each morning with gratitude. He cares for the soil, shares generously during good seasons, prepares wisely for difficult ones, and trusts that faithful effort carries its own reward. Both encounter drought. Only one loses peace. Scarcity often begins inside long before it appears outside. Gratitude quietly interrupts its power. Anger, too, can become another material for inner refinement. The ancient philosophers never denied anger. They questioned what happened after it arrived. A spark can warm a home. The same spark can burn it down. The difference lies in how it is guided. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that every difficult person acts according to the understanding they possess at that moment. This perspective did not excuse harmful behavior, but it softened hatred. Understanding became stronger than revenge. Compassion became stronger than resentment. The one who forgives first is often the one who becomes free first. Reaction eventually becomes wisdom through repeated awareness. Most reactions occur automatically. A harsh word invites another. An insult produces another insult. Fear creates more fear. The cycle repeats because few people interrupt it. Ancient masters practiced a different discipline: pause. Observe, choose, respond. This simple sequence appears almost insignificant. Practiced daily, it transforms an entire life. Modern psychology describes this as increasing emotional regulation and conscious choice. Ancient traditions simply called it mastery. The language changed. The principle remained. Transformation is not achieved in extraordinary moments alone. It is built through ordinary repetitions. Every morning offers another opportunity to replace complaint with gratitude. Every conversation invites deeper listening. Every disappointment becomes another chance to strengthen patience. Every mistake becomes another lesson instead of another identity. The living alchemist understands that life itself supplies the fire needed for growth. Nothing is wasted, not failure, not grief, not uncertainty. Even suffering can become wisdom when approached consciously. The greatest teachers throughout history quietly demonstrated this truth. Socrates transformed accusation into dignity. Epictetus transformed slavery into freedom of mind. Marcus Aurelius transformed chaos into inner order. Lao Tzu transformed silence into profound teaching. None waited for perfect circumstances. They transformed themselves within imperfect ones. That is why their wisdom still speaks across centuries. Perhaps the final secret of alchemy is surprisingly simple. Gold was never the destination. Character was, peace was, love was, wisdom was. The external life slowly reflects what has been patiently refined within. An old craftsman nearing the end of his life once showed his grandson 2 walking staffs. The first was polished, decorated with silver, and admired by visitors. The second was worn smooth from decades of faithful use. "Which is more valuable?" the boy asked. The old man smiled. "The one that has carried someone faithfully through life's journey." Then he placed the older staff into the child's hands. "Become like this, useful, strong, quiet, and refined by every season." That is the work of the living alchemist, not escaping life, not controlling every circumstance, but allowing every season, every trial, every joy, and every ordinary day to transform the heart into something wiser than it was yesterday. For in the end, the greatest masterpiece any person creates is not a monument of stone or a fortune of gold. It is the person they patiently become. Chapter 15, Final Reflection. The greatest manifestation. As every great journey approaches its final pages, one question quietly remains. After studying the wisdom of Hermetic philosophers, Egyptian initiates, Greek sages, Stoic emperors, Taoist masters, and seekers who devoted entire lifetimes to understanding the human soul, what is the greatest secret they leave behind? Is it hidden knowledge, a forgotten ritual, a mystical formula, or something far simpler and infinitely more demanding? The answer appears again and again across civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries. The greatest manifestation is not changing the world before changing yourself. It is becoming a different observer of the world. For thousands of years, humanity has searched outside itself for the key to fulfillment. Some searched through conquest, others through wealth, recognition, endless achievement, or even secret doctrines promising immediate transformation. Yet the oldest teachers gently redirected every sincere seeker toward the same place: return inward, not because the outer world lacks importance, but because every experience of that world is filtered through consciousness. The Hermetic writings described humanity as participating in the divine mind. The Stoics reminded their students that events themselves do not disturb us as much as our judgments about them. Plato taught that every visible creation begins first as an invisible pattern. The Tao Te Ching spoke of harmony arising naturally when one ceases struggling against the flow of life. Though their languages differed, their wisdom quietly converged. Life changes when the observer changes. Imagine 2 travelers walking through the same ancient forest. The first notices only fallen branches, muddy paths, and gathering clouds. Every obstacle confirms his belief that the journey is difficult. Every inconvenience strengthens his frustration. The second traveler walks the very same trail. He notices the shade protecting weary travelers, birds building nests among towering trees, streams offering fresh water, and sunlight filtering through leaves. Neither traveler created the forest. Both created a different experience of it. Consciousness quietly selected what deserved attention. Psychology today increasingly confirms this ancient observation. Human beings rarely experience reality in its entirety. Instead, attention continually filters overwhelming amounts of information, highlighting what agrees with existing expectations, beliefs, emotional habits, and previous experiences. Expectation influences perception. Perception influences behavior. Behavior influences results. Ancient wisdom observed this long before laboratories existed. This understanding invites neither magical thinking nor passive optimism. It calls for responsibility. If consciousness influences perception, then every thought deserves careful stewardship. If perception guides choices, then awareness becomes one of life's greatest disciplines. If repeated choices gradually form character, then every ordinary day quietly shapes destiny. The chain is remarkably simple. A consciousness shapes perception. Perception guides choices. Choices shape character. Character shapes life. What appears to be fate often begins as unnoticed habit. Consider the life of a humble potter living in a small village centuries ago. Every morning before touching clay, he spent several moments sitting quietly outside his workshop. Visitors believed he was praying for successful business. Years later, one apprentice finally asked why he never began working immediately. The old potter smiled. "I am not preparing the clay. I am preparing the hands that will shape it." His answer contained a profound truth. Before shaping anything outside ourselves, we must first shape the one doing the shaping. Most people spend enormous effort attempting to improve circumstances while neglecting the consciousness responding to those circumstances. The ancient masters reversed the order. Cultivate wisdom first. Outer influence follows naturally. This is why so many traditions placed extraordinary importance upon daily disciplines instead of dramatic experiences. Transformation rarely arrives through one unforgettable moment. It quietly accumulates through repeated attention. One patient response, one grateful thought, one honest decision, one courageous conversation, one forgiven offense, one evening of honest reflection. These seemingly insignificant moments become the architecture of an entirely different life. The Greeks often compared character to a sculpture. Each decision removed another unnecessary piece. Each virtue revealed something already hidden within. Likewise, ancient alchemists never believed gold suddenly appeared from ordinary metal. Transformation required heat, patience, purification, time. Human character follows exactly the same law. Life itself becomes the furnace. Every disappointment removes illusion. Every challenge strengthens endurance. Every act of forgiveness purifies resentment. Every season contributes something essential. Nothing meaningful develops instantly. The greatest manifestation is therefore not acquiring extraordinary abilities. It is refining ordinary living until wisdom quietly becomes natural. There is another lesson that older generations often understand more deeply than youth. Many people spend decades asking life for more. Very few spend equal time asking how they themselves might become more patient, more truthful, more compassionate, more disciplined, more grateful. Yet history repeatedly suggests that becoming more meaningful often matters far more than possessing more. Character silently attracts what manipulation never can. Trust, respect, friendship, peace. These treasures rarely arrive by force. They grow where integrity has already prepared the soil. One of the oldest practices preserved across multiple philosophical traditions is evening reflection, not self-condemnation, not endless analysis, simply honest observation. How did I think today? What guided my choices? Where did fear quietly replace wisdom? Where did gratitude replace complaint? What lesson wishes to continue tomorrow? Such reflection gradually awakens consciousness from unconscious repetition. The days stop blending together, life becomes intentional. Perhaps this is why Seneca encouraged reviewing each evening before sleep. Marcus Aurelius filled private journals with reminders directed only toward himself. Ancient monks quietly examined their hearts before extinguishing their lamps. They understood something modern people often forget. Growth belongs to those willing to observe themselves honestly. No one else can perform this work. Every sunrise offers another beginning. Every evening offers another opportunity to learn. The journey never truly ends. It simply deepens. So before closing this book, consider accepting one final challenge. Not for one afternoon, not for 1 week. For the next 30 days, quietly become an observer of your own consciousness. Each morning before speaking to the world, spend a few moments listening to yourself. Observe your thoughts before believing them. Ask whether they arise from fear or wisdom, from gratitude or scarcity, from love or resentment. During the day, practice gratitude intentionally. Notice ordinary blessings that often escape hurried attention. The warmth of sunlight, a sincere conversation, a healthy breath, a shared meal, a peaceful evening. The smallest blessings often become life's greatest treasures once they are truly seen. Act with integrity even when convenience suggests another path. Allow your actions to confirm your deepest values rather than your passing emotions. Character grows quietly. No audience is required. Finally, each evening, reflect without harshness. Celebrate progress. Learn from mistakes. Forgive yourself where necessary. Begin again tomorrow. The ancient teachers never demanded perfection. They asked only for sincere practice. There is one final story, preserved through generations of Hermetic tradition. An elderly initiate had spent nearly 60 years studying inside one of Egypt's oldest mystery schools. As his final days approached, a young student eagerly asked him for the greatest secret he had learned after a lifetime devoted to sacred wisdom. The old man looked toward the setting sun, where golden light slowly covered the desert stones. "I arrived here hoping to discover hidden powers," he said softly. "I leave having discovered a quieter miracle." "And what is that?" the student whispered. The old initiate smiled. "Every morning I am given another opportunity to become someone slightly wiser than yesterday. Nothing more was added, nothing needed to be. Perhaps that has always been the greatest manifestation, not bending life to every personal desire, but allowing life to patiently transform the one who experiences it. For when consciousness becomes clearer, perception becomes wiser. When perception becomes wiser, choices become nobler. When choices become nobler, character quietly matures. And when character matures, life itself begins reflecting that hidden transformation in ways no formula could ever guarantee. The journey, then, has never truly been about changing the world. It has always been about becoming the kind of person capable of seeing it differently. And perhaps that is the oldest secret ever whispered by the ancient masters.